it's in USB-C.
Is it 6:30? I must.
You're close, 6:29.
Okay, I'm seated.
Oh, I
Oh,
got some
look,
money.
you got snacking rolls.
Cash.
What do you got cash for?
That's a wonderful question, Jennifer. It was in my bag. I don't know.
What do I got?
A little bit of entanglement there, don't you, Garrett?
Yeah, that's my,
Thought you were a little more organized than that.
my cord of cables in here.
Oh,
Oh
geez.
my God.
I thought you'd have those wound up with rubber bands, the whole 9 yards.
I don't use these often, but.
Here we go.
Luke, are we good to go? All right, it is 6:30 on March 5th, 2026. I am calling to order the Town Board Workshop. Up first, we have a presentation by Josh Artuzo explaining the FEMA flood mapping changes along Empire Boulevard. So Josh, take it away.
Thank you. So for some of the existing board members, I've been here before to talk about the town's floodplain program. For those that may not be familiar with it, the town of Webster is responsible for administering the federal FEMA floodplain regulations at the local level. And what has transpired, if some of you recall, we recently updated our flood prevention damage ordinance back in 2024 as FEMA had updated some of the flood mapping within the town of Webster. Now, there's an individual landowner that questioned the designation on their particular property, and they went through a very extensive technical effort with a consultant and several flood engineers. And basically, they applied to FEMA for what's called a letter of map revision. So they are applying to actually officially change the federal FEMA floodplain maps. They went through that process. It took about a year and a half, and ultimately New York State DEC and FEMA have accepted all of their technical records and data that proves that their original FEMA floodplain elevation mapping was incorrect. So now the town has to update its local ordinance to reflect this letter of map revision that has been approved. The reason we have to do this is to maintain our good standing with the National Flood Insurance Program. So I'll just go through quickly a couple of the documents. This is the official letter of map revision that explains the technical analyses that essentially lowers the floodplain elevation for this particular property by about 5 feet, which is pretty substantial. The property in question, actually there's several properties in question, even some that border our town and go into the town of Penfield. So most of you are familiar with our bowling alley and the movie theater on Empire Boulevard and the former Creek's Edge Farm Market that is just west of Country Max. That is the area in question. So what you're looking at right here is the revised FEMA flood map panel for this particular area. The blue area indicates the 100-year floodplain. The red striped area is the floodway. That's where active water would be moving in the event of a 100-year storm event. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, it actually lowers the floodplain elevation by approximately 5 feet, which will eventually pave the way for development to occur on that site where it normally wouldn't have been. So basically, this is the one section of our existing town code that needs to be updated with the, to reflect this recently approved letter of map revision. So we are just bringing this before the board because it does require holding a public hearing, and we are required to have this in place by May so that we don't lose the ability for our residents who do currently live in floodplains to obtain flood insurance on their properties. So that's this in a nutshell. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that anyone might have.
All right, I'll go down the line. Nick?
No, thank you so much, Josh.
John?
I'm good, thanks, Josh.
Jen?
Can you put that map back up?
Sure.
Can you point out where the Creekside Farm is in this map?
Yes, it's right here.
Okay, and that's the area that is now being moved out?
No,
No.
unfortunately, I don't have the previous map, but basically the floodway, the red and blue striped area, used to be a lot narrower, which then affected the blue areas in having an inaccurate floodplain elevation. So what they did was they sent surveyors out there, they collected a lot of data analysis of where the stormwater's coming from Penfield. They also evaluated the culvert that goes under Empire Boulevard, because I believe that was replaced or enlarged at one point, which certainly impacts areas south. So all of this area, actually, even the entire movie theater was within the FEMA 100-year floodplain, and now that property has essentially been removed along with several others in that general vicinity. But there is obviously still quite a bit of floodplain to the south.
I see. Where's the 5-foot can you point out where that 5-foot difference is that you
Yeah.
described?
So basically, the previous mapping said that the flood would go up to 425 feet above sea level, and now the new flood elevation for this area is roughly 419 or 420.
Okay. Thank you.
Garrett?
Josh, yeah, but how many homeowners and homes are impacted by this, if any?
Actually, there's no single-family residences impacted. They are all commercial properties within the town of Webster.
Okay, so this is really going to impact more future commercial development than individual homeowners then, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, nothing else? Thank you, Josh. Our next is the presentation by Montante Solar, proposed solar garden at the Xerox campus. I know this is a hot topic, so I do want to make ground rules here that this is a presentation by Montante, Xerox, Haley, and Aldridge to the town board. This is not a time for public comment. You will have your 5 minutes once this is over. But for right now, we need to be respectful of their time, and as they are respectful of yours. So I believe they would like Tony Kashani, head of the planning board, to speak first, because he is going to walk us through the steps that the planning board took in their due diligence of site approval.
Sure enough, thank you. This project started out with us, a year ago now, but November, I believe it was November 18th, they were in for a preliminary approval for this project, and this was, again, for the Webster Solar Garden by Montante. The board looked at it, there were concerns. Many of the people that were here that evening were concerned about noise, the health, safety, welfare, and the applicants addressed all the concerns and everything that people had. One of the big things, though, that was of the board's concern was putting these panels on top of this contaminated soil section, and they were going to be using these gabions. They were not going to be drilling in. There was no contact under the ground or making any holes. So with that, then the concern was, well, okay, then what do these big stone containers weigh? Will they sink? So that became another big issue with it, is the weight of these things. In time, in the summer, would that be settling? Well, they actually came back in with a study on that, and the study showed that the weight would be 2,000 pounds per square foot it would hold on the finished product. And really, they only weighed like 450 pounds, if I believe the number was right, but way less than what, so it would be okay. The other thing was the noise issues, and that was kind of dispelled. I mean, we've heard stories of, war stories of it all, but in reality there is no real loud noises as a result of these things. Disturbance of the area was, I believe, 17 and a half acres of land, and then it was, you're going to be cutting down trees and so on. Well, in 1990s, there were no trees there. It was just field area. So whatever's there, obviously, are smaller trees. And the clearing, I think, well, I could be off of it, but I think it's only like 15 and a half acres was going to be cleared, something like that, on it. And there would be no destruction of main trees and so on and so forth. They do have test pits in there. The test pits are monitored monthly for any contaminated water, so that's thoroughly checked all the while also. So not to hold you up with too much of this stuff, I'll just give you a couple of things that we did with the approval we made. Let's see, I'll give you the final approval checklist. This is what we did. We made it subject to the PRC comments, which there were several. Made it subject to preliminary approval conditions, all governmental fees, Department of Public Works approvals, and then we put significant construction was to commence, and the conditions to be on the cover sheet of the final drawings. And the engineer for the proposed project was to certify that everything was done properly. A letter of credit would be issued to the town for the project, and this was subject to all final approval, the final approved minutes of the meeting. And we also put in there then vegetation and tree cutting limits shall be added to the plans. Removal shall be limited to surface level only. No soil disturbance. In other words, they were planning on doing was taking the trees that had to come out, just cutting them, but not disturbing the soil, not digging it up. And let's see, the drawing notes called a note to protect the bedrock trench system and the fencing and the ballast area installation. The application shall enter into a host agreement. This became a big issue with what's in it for the town. What do we get out of this thing? I mean, we're putting this in, Xerox is doing it. There's tax dollars going into it. So we felt that we don't know what that would be a town board's function, obviously, is to work something out, a financial agreement with the town to be compensated in lieu of taxes. So that definitely is in here, and that's going to be up to you folks to wherever, if you move forward with this, that you'll be dealing with that. Let's see, we had also, the site plan should clearly show both the landfill cover and include the associated landfill's hazardous waste site and site numbers on the final drawing. Decommissioning bond, that is if one day this goes out of business, they close down or it has to be removed, then there's a bond placed to cover that expense at that time. And the biggest thing we had in there, and I think you've got the letter, was a letter from the DEC. We would not give them permission to move forward any further until they received a letter from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to say they were okay with doing this project, that it did not cause any hazardous situations. And I believe you now have that letter, correct?
Yes.
The supervisors received that letter?
Yes, we received a letter
So
from the
you've got
DEC earlier this week that states that the entire plan will not change any mitigation efforts.
So that's basically a little rundown of what we did and what we looked at, and actually the vote was a full vote, 7-member board, and everybody voted for that. That was passed well, and there was a lot of discussion on it. It didn't go light by any stretch, but ultimately it was separated from the hazardous thinking to the site and impact on the neighborhood and so on and so forth, and ultimately we gave it a final approval.
All right, thank you, Tony.
I got a quick
In
question.
the interest of time, John,
I
we're
got
going
a
to let
quick-
Montante speak first.
Well,
You can ask
I have
Tony
a question
questions.
for Tony.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Tony
One
will answer
question.
questions at the end. No, we're
Well,
going to
he's up here right now.
He is up here. He's going to stay for this entire presentation.
Okay,
We need to
I'll
be-
ask him later
We
then.
need to be conscious of everybody's
Yeah,
time. So would
I'll
Montante
hang
please?
on.
would Montante please approach and give their presentation?
Got caught up again.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having our team here today. My name is Katie Sosha. I'm the Director of Project Development representing Montante Solar. We also have Kim Nason from Phillips Lytle, Marcus Lathrop from Xerox, and Janice Sues from Haley and Aldrich. Together, we are presenting to the town board the proposed 6.6 megawatt solar project to be constructed on Xerox's campus in the town of Webster. We are here today in pursuit of an industrial use permit, and our team believes that this project fits all the criteria for the issuance of the IUP. I'd like to start by reviewing the project timeline with the board to date. The project development on this project began over 3 years ago. During that time, we've completed environmental reviews and studies with several agencies, including a detailed review with New York State DEC, which I'll get into that in a little bit. Our team in July of 2025 officially kicked off the review process with New York State DEC. And from there, later in July, the town board referred to the planning board this project for a full site plan review. In September, we went before the sketch plan meeting. And then at that meeting, there was some concern from the community voiced. We did arrange to, with the help of the heads of the HOA, a meeting with the Meadows HOA in late September. We then took some time. We implemented some of that feedback that we got during that time, which again, I'll go through in a little bit. And we went before the town planning board again in November of 2025 for preliminary site plan approval. After that, we went again for, after implementing more feedback from that meeting, we went for final site plan approval in early January. In January, we also had another community outreach effort where we launched a project webpage, which had all the project information in one consorted place. We held a community, and we did advertise that meeting as well. We did hold a community meeting in which Montante, Xerox, Haley and Aldrich, and DEC were all present and available for questions and answers. And then we completed our New York State DEC review just at the end of February, and I forwarded that email over to your team, I believe last week. And that brings us to today. Our team has been working through the approvals on this process since July, and our team has made a concerted effort to make the project information available to the public. I'd like to kind of start out by walking through kind of what we're going to go through here today. But please stop me at any time, or any of my fellow team members if there are any questions. We're going to go through the Xerox site history and DEC oversight, how this project coexists with existing safeguards, the general project background, community benefits, and then community concerns and feedback that we received. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague to talk through the Xerox site history and DEC oversight.
Hi, for those I haven't met, Marcus Lathrop. I'm the manager for assessments and environmental operations at Xerox Corporation. And then Janice is with me. She's with Haley and Aldrich, and they're our primary third-party contractor. They help out with all the remediation activities, and they've been at the site for 20, 30 years now, so helping us through everything. So that's why they're here with me as well. The first slide here is the site. So you can see it's kind of tough to see from there, but because the site's so big, but we have the overall property boundaries for Xerox campus here in Webster. The yellow line there is the area here for the project. At that part of the property, just south of that, so the property is broken up. Tessie Plastics purchased a large portion of the property back in 2021, so that's the kind of shoe-looking white border there. That's their property, and then the rest in the checkered lines inside is all of our Xerox campus. Over to the right there, that red shows you exactly where this proposed project is, the landfill location, so the C&D landfill and our industrial waste landfill, and then from the upper portions there's some estimates of distance to different property lines and residential lines closest domiciles. So that's a little more information there. Next slide. As far as site protective measures, control measures, so we operate under a permit with New York State DEC, and that specifies what remedial measures, what monitoring, notification, inspection requirements we have on the property, and that includes the landfill, the broader campus, but includes the landfill as well. NISDEC, they review and approve all of our activities. We do annual reports, and are in contact with them on a routine basis with activities that are happening on Xerox campus. As you can see from the last slide, the industrial waste and C&D landfills are just a small portion of the whole property there, or the site development area there. So just a small portion of that. Note here, landfills, they were all closed and approved of under DEC guidelines. In consulting with DEC, the corrective actions and the institutional control measures, those were all put in place per DEC requirements. We have a groundwater recovery trench is there. You'll see that in some of the future slides here. We made sure, we're working with Montante, that we kept areas open so that all of our current remediation operations would not be disturbed. We're not moving wells. We're not affecting the current activities that are going on there. So that was a big thing from my perspective. As the manager for environmental operations, last thing I want to do is to create an issue that endangers human health and endangers the environment. So that's huge to me, and that was part of the reason, part of the discussions with Montante was to make sure that those systems were not impacted by this potential opportunity. So we have the groundwater recovery trench that collects groundwater that is in the area leaving the site, and that's tied into the local POTW. We have an industrial sewer use permit that governs the groundwater that's collected and sent to them. And so through that, we do monthly testing of the water from the landfill, and we provide those reports to the town of Webster. The groundwater monitoring has been going on for over 30 years. And everything that we do there is conducted to make sure that our controls are in place and are still protective of the local community. And DEC receives all that monitoring and reporting. They receive that information, that data, they review it, they come back to us with questions and give us approvals on the data that we sent them. Next slide. Were you talking to this?
Hi, my name is Janice Zooks. I'm from Haley & Aldrich. I'm an environmental consultant that supports Xerox with their remedial efforts on the site, any coordination with DEC. This slide just goes into a little bit more detail on some of the technical elements of the environmental remediation features on the site. So again, on the right-hand side, the yellow outline is the general project area. The two landfills, the square area at the bottom, that's the inactive hazardous waste landfill that's been capped with asphalt. Above that is what is called the C&D landfill that is also capped with a soil cover. The C&D landfill waste is vegetative waste, so it's not hazardous. The landfill that's probably most in question or discussed is the landfill further to the south. That's the square area that's capped with asphalt. So I just wanted to get into some of the protective engineering controls that are in place. Again, we do have the asphalt cap over it. The thick black line that you see north of that trench, that's the blasted bedrock trench. So it kind of acts like, think of like a French drain. Water is preferentially directed to that trench. It spans beyond the full width of the landfill itself. It's meant to capture any contamination that may be coming from the landfill. That was all, there was a full assessment that was done. It was designed and implemented under DEC's purview decades ago. So that's what that is. The next bullet there talks about monitoring wells. You'll see bunch of black dots kind of scattered throughout both within the yellow area and then also outside. So those are all monitoring wells. They're all established to monitor groundwater conditions on a routine basis. Again, that whole monitoring plan was approved by DEC. They serve a multi-purpose, one, just to understand if our operations are going as planned. They're also to serve as an early warning if there's any potential issue, and any modifications need to be made to the remedial efforts. For the last 10 years, the wells that are furthest out have been non-detect. There are detections right where the landfill is. That's anticipated. That's where they're right next to the trench, so that is anticipated. But the ones that are further north, those have all been non-detect for over 10 years. Again, Marcus had mentioned about the groundwater. It is captured in that trench and treated at the Town of Webster POTW. We also have contingencies in place to handle that water differently if there are any issues and we cannot discharge to the town. So that those are in place, those contingencies. And then another protective measure is just how the solar project was designed. New York State DEC has guidance in place to establish what studies need to happen, things that need to be put in place or considered as part of designing a solar development on a landfill. So those were all followed for this project. And it also aligns with the New York State incentives for solar redevelopment on landfills, supporting that land reuse.
Yeah, so I'll talk through how our solar project coexists with the safeguards on the site. So we did complete our review with DEC. DEC completed an extensive review, again, that began in July of 2025. And the review was comprised of full review of civil designs, geoballasted foundation material spec sheets, stormwater runoff calcs, C&D landfill closure plan drawings, C&D landfill cover investigation reports, project-specific O&M plan, C&D landfill geotechnical report, an asphalt landfill geotechnical report, an asphalt landfill as-built drawings, a landfill cap monitoring maintenance and contingency plan, and our lease agreement review with Xerox. So it was a very comprehensive review. DEC confirmed that the project as currently designed will not conflict with any corrective action activities occurring on the site, and they have also confirmed that the project is in compliance with DMM4 guidance for solar developments on closed landfills. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk just real quick about means and methods of construction. We are using a geoballasted foundation here, gabion baskets filled with rock to weight the system down. There are no ground penetrations in the landfill areas. This is a tried and true method. Montante has installed about 40 megawatts of solar in New York State. This is one of the applications that we use all the time, so we are very comfortable and very familiar with it. There's no trenching or excavation within the landfill areas at all. It's an above ground conduit system. And the areas of disturbance are situated in the southern corner of the project. And they're really limited to the access road, the utility poles, the concrete pad, and all the equipment coming together and going into underneath that concrete pad. Soil sampling will be completed during that process, just in compliance with Xerox's comprehensive plan with DEC as well. If you go to, the next slide, I'll talk about general project background. So in addition to our review with DEC, Bureau of Hazardous Waste Division, which is what I just previously reviewed with you, there's been significant environmental due diligence with other agencies. Again, I had mentioned that this review process started with us about 3 years ago. During that time, We've confirmed with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that there are limited wetlands on site, and the impacts of the wetlands actually won't even trigger the nationwide 51 permit. It's under 0.1 acres. We reached out to the New York State Historic Preservation Office, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the New York State DEC Wetlands Division, which is the newer requirements for wetlands as of 2025. And then this project, again, went through the town planning board and town engineer review as well. The planning board did issue a type 2 action. And in addition, I believe it was just earlier today, the town engineer completed the SWIP review for the project as well. So just want to talk about the site plan. So this is a 6.6 megawatt project. It includes almost 11,000 solar panels atop of that geoballasted racking, and 18 inverters that have been strategically sited in the southeast corner of the project. That is over 1,300 feet away from the Meadows HOA property line and about 1,000 feet away from the other property line to the northeast. It's 1,650 feet away from the closest point on the Meadows HOA walking trail and about 1,700 feet from the closest residential property line thereafter. And then about 1,860 feet from the actual closest domicile. The project will be connected directly into RG&E's distribution lines along Caracas Drive there. And the project has been designed so that all environmental monitoring and obligations will obviously stay intact with DEC. If you go to the next slide, we do have a landscape screening plan that was part of our review process with the planning board. We got some feedback during an HOA meeting, very concerned about sightlines into the property. As a result of that meeting, there was a suggestion by one of the homeowners, like, can you tape off with high-vis tape or caution tape the bordering areas and see what we can see. We did do that. We also flew a drone and took pictures documenting if we could see that, both along the tree line and then also along the HOA walking trail that was submitted to the planning board as part of their review. We couldn't see anything from those areas. However, we understand that that is a major concern. And so we are also going to implement about 200 feet of trees on either side to the northeast and northwest of the project to further ensure that those view sheds are kept. They would be double row coniferous trees. The trees that were selected were feedback, again, from another HOA member. We're doing the Norway spruce and red cedar so that it stays full year coverage. To mitigate view sheds, and trees will be between a minimum of 10 feet upon planting to ensure that these trees are of height that matter, which are in alignment with the edge of the backing or racking of the panels. And in addition, Xerox has also agreed that they will implement these plantings even prior to major construction starting. So if we do get approval from the board in the next month or so, Xerox would implement the planting of those trees this spring season. If you go to the next slide, I can go into community benefits. As the chairman of the planning board mentioned, host community agreement was one of the conditions of our site plan approval. The numbers that are up here are the equivalent to full taxes of the project as reviewed by the town assessor. The project pays the equivalent of full taxes, but notably pays 50% of that value within the first 3 years of the project's lifespan. So that's pretty significant. And the anticipated land tax without solar, just the land value itself, would be just over $17,000 over that 15-year period. And again, those numbers came from the town assessor's office. Decommissioning plan and bond. The project does have a decommissioning plan as part of, incorporated as part of the project. It ensures that the project is considered temporary and that there is a plan to fully remove it after the end of its useful life, post-operation. It also makes sure that there's a trigger mechanism to commence the decommissioning process. So the trigger mechanism is either the project not producing electricity or being abandoned for longer than 12 months, or the operating term expires of the project. It would then trigger the removal of the system. A decommissioning bond is also incorporated as part of this. It's posted with the town of Webster to ensure the removal after the end of its useful life. This means that the town isn't left financially responsible and taxpayer funds aren't used to remove it. And one of the conditions, again, of the planning board is that this bond rating must be of A or higher. Some other community benefits. This is an inclusive community solar project, so 40% of the energy is reserved for low to moderate income households following NYSERDA program rules. So approximately like 2.6 megawatts of the project will be the portion going back to the community through that LMI community solar program. And it's a guaranteed 10% discount on the electric bill for those programs, and it's monitored by NYSERDA and DPS. Another indirect benefit is that this project does defray overall power costs. Solar projects help to offset the need for peaker plants, which aren't often talked about, because they coincide with high energy use times of the year, which are generally between June and September when we have those really warm spurts of weather. Peaker plants are electricity generators that are turned on when demand is especially high. They are backup power run on fossil fuels. They emit high levels of air pollution. They're the most expensive type of power on the grid because they only run 20 to 30 times a year. So the startup and shutdown costs of those plants are very high. And because there's a lot older infrastructure, there's a lot of technological inefficiencies and power loss to the grids from those plants. So they're not as efficient as technology we have today. In addition, something that I haven't really talked about very much, but we are incorporating monarch plantings. It's been part of our project the entire time since the first time we submitted our civil drawings, but there are about 4,000 square feet of dedicated plantings, mainly milkweed. There's one area that's a little wetter that we have to have a mixed seed in that area, but that'll be dedicated for monarch plantings throughout the life of the project as well. And I'm gonna pass this off to my colleague.
So we wanted to, Xerox, we wanted to put this slide in here, just because some of the conversations around this project that are in the community, there's a sense that maybe Xerox, doesn't support the community, so we wanted to put this up there to kind of emphasize the fact that Xerox is dedicated to the community and want to do the best thing for Webster. So on the left side is kind of the donations and the community outreach, getting around the volunteer hours and volunteerism that Xerox employees do between United Way support, the Rochester Museum Science Center, for the Xerox consultant program where some of our engineers went into schools to teach kids, Operation Food Basket, where every year we collect food for the needy, the monthly bag lunch outreach, a bunch of other volunteer opportunities that Xerox does. And then in addition to that, just use of our campus for community benefits, different events, e-waste collection, the Wilmot Cancer Center Institute Warrior Weekend, they're using our parking lots for that, and Tour to Cure. So, I'm not gonna read through every single thing there, but I just wanted to throw this in there just to reiterate that Xerox, we're here for the community. The project we're doing, we think is gonna benefit the community. We've looked at it, we have the necessary precautions in there to protect the community from any danger, so, yeah, that's it. Next slide.
So some community outreach and responses. Oh, I'm sorry, Janice, this is your slide. Yeah, go for it, sorry. General health and safety, Janice.
We put this slide together just because of some of the questions that we had been receiving from community members and/or others, just about the general health and safety of the project. All along, the health and safety have been the highest priorities through the various phases: design, construction, operation. There is a commitment to protect nearby residents and the community. The continued compliance with all safety and environmental regulations will continue third bullet down, DEC is, this is under their purview, and it won't change. As I think Katie had mentioned, they provided a statement indicating that they don't see a concern with this project on this area of the site. Fourth bullet down, routine inspections, monitoring, and ongoing regulatory review that will continue. It's required by Xerox per their permit to maintain all those pieces. There are emergency response and contingency plans that are in place, even before, without the solar. Those will remain, and there's additional that have been in place as part of the solar project. We've had various meetings with the town board, HOA. There have been public engagement sessions to try to make sure we have heard feedback and are able to respond. The second section there just talks about the design. It's been designed to prevent risk. Minimal ground disturbance, as we've talked about. We're not going to be penetrating the cap. We have stormwater and erosion controls that are of standard to make sure that there aren't any issues, runoff or anything like that. And the site boundaries of this project are well defined. There'll be fencing around the entire thing with controlled access. Next slide. And just more along these lines of general health and safety, the landfill cap and the integrity of that. Xerox is already required to do annual inspections of that, any maintenance that's required. That will continue. The ballasted racking system, the way these panels are being supported, they can be moved if needed for any maintenance. So there's no permanent fixed features that prevent future cap maintenance. I think we mentioned some geotechnical testing that had already been done, indicating that the project should not, the project was in with respectable tolerances, or acceptable tolerances for the cap. It's a multi-layered engineering cap. The cap is not just the asphalt on top. There's subbase beneath it. There's 2 feet of soil, clay, and there's a geotextile membrane. So there is more than just that cap that's protecting exposure to the waste. And again, if settlement or anything or any issues were to arise, the array can be removed and repairs can be made. In the last section there, groundwater remedial system protection. We mentioned this before, but just wanted to reiterate it because there have been so many questions. The project will not interfere with monitoring wells, recovery wells, the underground trench that we talked about. Those areas have been cleared from design elements of this, from the solar project. We made sure there's adequate spacing for large pieces of equipment to come in and maintain those wells. Or any other features. So that will continue. Let's see, the groundwater systems, they're not going to change the design from 30 years ago. It still stands, and we will continue to monitor and make any changes as needed. And again, we're going to continue to report these things to the DEC. They can provide comment as needed. That's under their purview. The health and safety, protection of the environment, and the public. Yeah, thank you.
I know another hot topic issue is the concern about noise, potential noise from the inverters. So I just want to take a moment to talk about that. So the inverters, again, like I mentioned, are strategically located in that southern corner of the project. And it's over 1,000 feet away from that property line to the northeast there, and then about 1,300 feet away from that property line to the northwest. I've heard concerns that the project would not be in compliance with the town code. Regarding sound pressure levels. And I did look into this myself, and I saw that, the town code is evaluated at the receiving property line and not the equipment itself. So I just did want to point that out as well. And when assessed using the town's criteria, the projected noise levels from this facility remain within all applicable levels. And there is also within the town code a 5 decibel differential that can be added. And so we actually took the more conservative number when we kind of looked at this to make sure it was within town code compliance. So I just wanted to point that out as well. These are sterile numbers too, so they don't account for ground absorption, vegetation, trees, real world noise that also absorbs this. So a 40 decibel is really not loud. It's like the would fade into the regular background noise. So I just wanted to be clear about that as well. And then another concern, if you go to the next slide, were just like environmental considerations. I've heard, obviously, the project, we've reviewed all of the different environmental agencies that this project has been reviewed by. But I know there was also concern about clearing the area and like the CO2 emissions that would actually be saved by this project. And so Xerox did complete a study. And just for the sake of the project, I know that I heard a comment about the trees maybe not being mature. Xerox did assume that 14 of the 15 acres were mature trees in their study and 1 acre was not. So I just want to be clear about that as well, about these numbers. But they found that, the project basically would recover from CO2 or break even on that CO2 loss within 3 years and then exponentially be a CO2 saver as well. So I believe this was provided to the town board, and I just wanted to point that out as well. And in addition, again, this project was vetted heavily by environmental agencies, and we haven't received any negative environmental feedback there. And then again, our team did create a website about the project just to help the community have transparency about what's going on. So information can be found there. DEC has also been really helpful, and I have this was actually all available at the community meeting on the 27th of January, but there is an email specifically that you can reach out to from the DEC for this project as well. So I have that up there as well. And then I just want to pass it off to my colleague, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Nason with Phillips Lytle, just here to kind of close out the presentation and bring us back to the ask and the request that's before this board. So as Katie mentioned, we are here, I know this is a work session this evening, but on the industrial use permit application and the host community agreement. We've run through kind of the comprehensive process that this project has been to date, even before getting to the town board, through the planning board, through the DEC, through multiple rounds of public input. In addition to the planning board site plan approval, the planning board did also recommend approval of the industrial use permit. That is a part of the code as well. This is under the town solar code, this is a permitted use at this site, in this district, with the issuance of the industrial use permit, which is required for any use that's being proposed in the industrial district. And there are very clear standards, obviously, in the code laying out what the requirements are for an IUP. And we respectfully submit that based on everything we've gone through tonight, everything that's been submitted over the past several months in the record and in the town board filing, that issuance of the IUP is appropriate. The project meets all the standards. It is well screened. It's appropriately buffered. It's fully monitored by DEC for potential impacts to landfill integrity. And it's a productive reuse of an industrial parcel that is otherwise not developable that will be a source of revenue for the town. And getting back to the IUP standards, the nature of its solar use doesn't create additional demand for sewage, water, transportation resources, and it doesn't result in the types of offsite impacts that you're typically looking at with an IUP, whether that's, dust, odor, light, air emissions, noise. So it's again, we respectfully submit that everything in the record shows we clearly meet those standards. But, we're here tonight. We've given our presentation. We thank everybody for bearing with us, and we're here to answer any questions. To the extent that there are any questions raised this evening that we don't have answers to, we'll make sure to submit responses in writing in advance of the next meeting as well.
Thank you. And John, you get first crack for
Thank you.
questions because we
Appreciate
did
it.
cut you off. But please, it is 7:18 now. We will continue to answer all questions from the board. We can start the town board meeting late. But Tony is available for questions, as is.
So my first question is going to go to the chairman of our planning board. Mr. Kashani, you had mentioned that a weight impact study was done. Do you have a copy of that someplace?
Do I have it?
Did they
No, but
provide you with
There
this
is a file
study?
of that, yes.
Okay.
We can provide.
Because
a copy.
what concerns me with respect to the weight study is, did that study take into account the 2014 tons of asphalt? Did it take that into consideration also, or no?
Yeah, what was existing, or what is existing is there, but they were putting the additional inch and a half.
Inch and a
I believe
half.
It was on top of that.
Right, that's
And
gonna be another
spread over the entire
2015.
area. And they did all the calculations on that.
Alright.
And there is a record of it, and they do have that.
Yeah, because I'd like to have a copy of that study.
I think, you could probably get that, right?
We have it on file. Yeah, I could get you a copy.
Okay, I'd like to take a look at that. With respect to the cap also, I have some concerns or questions. I have a lot of concerns. I'm not going to ask all my questions tonight because we'd be here till probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I know that you will be coming back in again, so I'll have additional questions at that time. But you had mentioned, we're going to put the array on the cap using the ballast, right? Am I correct or not? Okay, so I looked at the cap, the existing cap, and there is a significant amount of cracks on that cap. So I'm assuming that those will be addressed, I don't know, before you're just gonna put the 1.5 inches of asphalt on top of those cracks.
So the cracks have been addressed as part of our annual maintenance plan. We go in there, we look at that, and then we reseal those cracks. So that's done on an annual basis. Per the planning board's requirements, where they want another 1.5 inches of asphalt on top of what's existing.
Right.
So we're going in and we're doing that before any solar installation would occur.
So you're gonna seal the cracks before you put, because there's
Yeah.
existing cracks right now. So you're gonna seal them before you put the 1.5 inches on or after?
We seal it up and then we put it on top of that, yeah. it's-
Okay.
Our maintenance goes through and we reseal, so.
Great.
Yes.
So asphalt is porous. A lot of us have asphalt driveways. And this project is supposed to last for 20 years. Well, clearly, that asphalt is not going to last for 20 years. So to your point with respect to maintenance, how are you going to maintain if you got cracks running into the edge of the ballast? It'll clearly be running underneath it without having to take all the panels out. How do you maintain the maintenance?
So firstly, putting any additional asphalt or doing any changes to the cap, we'll work with an asphalt contractor.
You're
to
gonna
make sure
what?
that Xerox will work with an asphalt contractor to make sure
Well, sure, I
the
understand
repairs are
that.
going to be
I'm
done
just-
properly,
I'm
yeah.
just concerned about the maintenance.
Yeah, and then, as I indicated, the panels can be moved. I don't know, Katie, if you want to speak to that more, but they can be moved if needed. If there's any more if that's required. Otherwise, we'd work around the panels. There's enough clearance between panels to be able to do that.
And I'll just, again, speak, I know we've touched a little bit on Xerox's permit and the obligations that they have under their site management plan, but as part of that, there's an environmental easement that runs with the site that provides DEC access to the site, provides DEC's procedures for ongoing maintenance, making sure that the site management plan is still in effect. So DEC will also be monitoring that as well.
Well, I totally agree, and that's a great plan. I'm just looking at it from a logistics standpoint.
Yeah.
When you've got to get equipment in there, because you're going to have cracks in that cap. Eventually it's going to happen just due to the nature of asphalt. How do you get in there with a limited amount of room between these panels, remove the panels, remove any infrastructure that you need to remove with respect to the ballast that weighs 2,000 pounds each to address the faults in the asphalt? I mean, have you ever done this on any other site that has a landfill that has a cap on it? And what was the process with respect to, addressing the cracks?
Yeah, John, I think that last one is a good point of like, I think you've said you've done these projects before. Have you had instances before where you've removed equipment to reseal? What does that look like? What's the threshold?
Right.
Et cetera.
Yeah, sure. So to answer the first part of your question about clearances and things like that, the edge of the panels will be a minimum of 24 inches off the ground, which I get is not like high off the ground, but it is enough to be able to seal cracks and things like that. In addition, the ballasts themselves are filled with rock. It's not a
Right.
single ballast block, and
Yeah.
it would be annoying
Yep.
to lift all the rocks out and to go in and do it, but
No,
it
I-
is
I
but
get
it
it.
is possible. So that would be our plan. In addition, though, something that we've been kind of talking about behind the scenes are potential other issues, so like cracks might not even become an issue. And one of the things that we have been throwing around is an additional asphalt pad underneath the ballast, like the 1.5 inches, and then an additional 1.5 inches under the ballast itself. It's something that we would need to go back to the DEC for approval for, but if it is that concern of this board, we're happy to do that and to make that additional request to the DEC.
I honestly, I sincerely don't mean to contradict what you just said,
Okay.
but I have to. I used to work in the asphalt business and driveways. That asphalt will crack eventually. You're talking about a project duration of 20 years. You will have cracks. It will run underneath the ballast because asphalt is porous and it does rain and we get a lot of snow up here. So it's going to have an impact. It really is. And
John, I'm going to interrupt you. I think might be a good idea for you to do is to get a copy of all that information, just for the sake of time.
yeah, I'm done.
He's got it. No,
I'm done.
No, but underneath that, there's a 15-inch certified clay, whatever that means.
Right.
And then there's a membrane besides that, so
Got
it
it.
can't penetrate. But
Got it.
that is all stuff that's in your documentation. I'd get a copy of that from Josh probably. And
No,
that'll give you
I
all
totally
those-
understand. I'm just trying to address
Yep.
the maintenance of the asphalt
And
itself.
just to reiterate, even though I think everyone understands this, as Katie mentioned, while it would be very annoying to take all the rocks out and have to move them, if there's a crack in the cap that's an issue from DEC's perspective, we're going to have to do that. So it has to be feasible, and DEC oversees that, and that's part of the DMM4 guidance and the process that's done. Again, solar on landfills is not a new concept. It's promoted by EPA and DEC, and there are guidance documents out there because issues like this have come up. So it's something DEC will be aware of, and again, we have to address a concern if it comes up as part of Xerox's obligations at the site.
And you said that you have done this on other sites that have asphalt over the landfill, correct?
We have done a bunch of landfills and brownfields throughout New York State. We've never had to remove any type of project from the landfill that I know of, and I'll certainly double check with our head of construction just to make sure that that's the case.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm being specific. You've put solar panels on asphalt that covers a landfill. Your company has.
We've done DEC covered landfills, not with an asphalt cap.
Okay.
We've done other DEC landfills throughout New York State, all different kinds. Yep.
Thank you
My
so much.
question more specifically on that was, were the landfills industrial waste landfills or the construction and debris landfills that these solar panels are on in other locations across the state?
I can get you a list if you'd like of all the different landfills that we're currently working on out, and then like what type of landfill they are.
That would be very helpful, thank you.
Absolutely, be happy to.
On the cap question, like, so is there a written plan with thresholds when you'd move it? Or is it just, arbitrary, you're kind of seeing when it happens and the DEC's going to tell you? What's your process to handle this risk that the cap cracks and what's going to happen? Is it formally written or more informal?
It's formally written into the plan that the cap is inspected on an annual basis. If there are cracks that are observed, they need to be sealed on an annual basis. And
So
that goes,
then-
and that's a plan that is with the DEC, and that's, like, that they've actually required Xerox and Montante to provide, like, what is that inspection frequency, like, what is that gonna look like? That is actually part of the submittals that went to the DEC as part of the solar project.
Okay, so if I understand that as a non-engineer, so bear with me. The D says it's monitored. If the DC sees a crack, they're gonna tell you to seal it. You would then need to then take the ballast off and seal it and put it back on?
Not necessarily, it depends on the crack.
Okay.
So it's gonna have to depend. If there's a concern where the DEC says, you know, we don't like this crack, you need to move the panel, then that panel would have to be moved.
And is there, once again, I don't know the answer to this, so is there a time frame on that? Would they say, like, you gotta address this in 30, 60, 90 days, or how does that work?
They haven't established what what the response time would be.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're also talking about safety protocols that have largely been in place since we covered the landfill, years and years ago. So what we're talking about for sake of the solar project is bringing it to the idea of what extra precautions we're taking in the installation and the maintenance of this for sake of this meeting. I just want to kind of clarify, because it seems like we're getting into some of the semantics, which is really important in terms of residents, to make sure that everybody's safe, but also that's kind of a regular concern for Xerox with this property, given the history. So I would bring it back a little bit to, when it comes to the maintenance, the safety aspect, we're doing a lot of the testing through the wells throughout the property. So for sake of the resident, I imagine that's gonna be where your red flags would come up in the regular monitoring of these wells to make sure that there's no particles in the ground flow. So I guess I would say, is there any additional precautions with the construction of the project to kind of do some extra testing through those wells, just to make sure, for sake of the residents in the area, that there isn't any contamination, just to kind of give a little extra kind of credence and environmental value as the construction starts, if that makes sense?
So we're currently doing monthly sampling from
Awesome.
the groundwater, the trenches. So we're sampling on a monthly basis those, the concentrations for any sort of VOCs, and we're monitoring that and looking for trends. As far as the cap goes, I just want to reiterate, the asphalt's not the only layer there. There's multiple layers of impermeable material. So it's not like that's the only layer there, and then there's a slew of different engineering controls to prevent migration of any sort of those contaminants. We do the regular testing of the wells that are collecting the groundwater that themselves, and the ones that are going to the POTW is on a monthly basis for our permit. So, yeah, there's a whole list of different controls to prevent any sort of human health.
I just want to point out, and I appreciate you sharing that, it isn't the concern that there isn't controls. We know there's monthly controls in place. The questions are more aligned to the complications of maintaining the monthly controls with all of the, solar panels on there and the ballast and the complications that then creates on that site. I have a bunch of questions.
Just to that statement, I'd say that this project has been designed that it's not going to impact those controls. I mean, we took out solar panels so we could have access to our wells. We made sure that, there's nothing interfering with our current operations. So it's the area around our remedial activities is where these solar panels are being put.
So when this comes back for approval, what would be good to see, I'm sure it's gonna be on there, but where the panels are laid out, where the access is gonna be, and also the trees, because there was mention of the trees, that there's a lot of small trees, there's also mature trees, because I walked back there to kind of check out the lay of the land. And it isn't like there's 1 acre in one spot of mature trees. The mature trees are throughout, and I will agree, most of the trees back there are very small or smaller in size. My big question when you talk about not disturbing the land is it's not flat over there. It's on a hill. And I'm not sure, because I don't know what I was looking at, but I'm guessing it's the C&D landfill. There's a big mound. Is that all going to be taken out and leveled?
Nope, not at all.
So the
Nothing- that's not gonna
panels will be
disturbed.
set over like mounded areas and non-flat areas?
What I can do, because I know that we're kind of tight on time here, what I can do is actually have in our civil design pulled out for you, like the specs on how specifically we're handling the area up with the topography.
How are you going to address the cuttings of the trees? Because when I look at your plan and, you know, the outline of the plan, you know, I did a little field trip, and there's a lot of mature trees there, and I don't, without clear cutting, I don't understand how you're going to get those solar panels. So there's got to be, what I would presume, a significant amount of clear cutting, and there's a lot of mature trees there, a lot.
I do want to be clear, we are clear cutting that area. It
Okay.
is about 15 acres of
Yep.
trees that are going to be removed. What we aren't doing is soil disturbance, so the larger tree, well, we get in with bush hog of what we can, but then they have to be hand felled because we can't disturb the soil, so the roots can't be taken out.
Okay.
So I think that was the distinction that was trying to
Okay.
be made.
All right, in the interest of time, any further questions can be submitted to you guys, I believe. I know they've reached out to each and every one of you.
So
you've
when
had
will we have
their emails.
time? So we're going to email them questions,
Yep, that's why we're not doing a vote tonight.
and then what's going to happen after that?
After you email the questions,
Yeah.
you get the questions back from them, they answer them.
Okay, and then what? Then we going to discuss this as a board? We
Yeah,
gonna bring
That's
it back
what,
to
that's,
them?
that's
Like-
how the system works.
What also works, when we get to ask our questions in the public that are here.
Correct.
If it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer, right?
Garrett, we have to maintain our time frame here. It is
Truthfully, but this is
7:35.
important to residents, though, like, this is a big decision that will forever change Webster, and should we rush it, or, yeah, I mean, would I like to get home before 10 o'clock tonight for my daughter? Absolutely. But I wasn't elected to get my daughter to bed on time. I was elected to represent everyone in Webster, and sometimes it takes time.
We've done it before in past meetings,
And
it's
is-
run
No,
over.
we have done
And
it
is
in past
rushing-
times, but the fact is we're asking the same questions over and over again, so
I don't
please answer.
think we are.
Yeah,
I respectfully got to disagree with that
I
one.
disagree
Because
with
I
that.
wrote these questions down, and I have not asked any of these questions in previous meetings.
yeah.
Well, there are also meeting minutes from the previous ones about questions asked, but again, ask your questions, and we are going to be discussing this as a board, which is why we are not following the vote tonight. We also want to give the residents time to reach out to them with any additional questions.
Yeah, it just takes time.
Yeah,
Can we ask a few more questions? We get another 15, 20 minutes here? In the interest of democracy and representing the people of Webster, or is the time that important that we can't?
Well,
devote
we
little
do
more time
have a
over here?
very long agenda tonight, is the other issue that we have.
Okay.
And this is not the last time they're back. They have also reached out to you multiple times, and you have ignored them, so I want to bring that to light.
Is that really the best approach to
Wow.
take here?
Wow.
So I should not rely on the advice of counsel when it comes to when to ask questions?
No, Garrett.
Is that what you're saying here, Alex?
I'm saying that what you need to do is you
No,
need to
Alex,
have a time and a
what are you
place.
saying here?
But that's the
This
problem
seems a
right
little
now, is this is a
unprofessional.
workshop for the town board. We have
Correct,
had
to
multiple
ask
opportunities. We have set the time that we needed to be respectful of everybody's time here, because they did come out from Buffalo as well.
Well, when they come back, if we need to extend the time, we will extend the time at that
Well,
meeting.
when they come
then.
back, there's no time frame, there's no time set at the next one, so we have
There's
time to
technically no
answer our
time set tonight
questions.
either.
Oh, there is, when our town board meeting is supposed to be taking place at 7:30.
But there's no time for the workshop, so it goes when it goes. I mean, Alex, if your stance here is, this isn't important enough to spend the time here, and it should be done via emails in private, and come later, and we should rush this, and you should question the advice of counsel publicly, then that's your stance.
It is not my
I don't think that
stance.
that's a fair position, Garrett. I think at
I
this
hear you.
point,
That's exactly
we are,
what he, that's
we are
exactly
trying
what
to
he's
what he
saying.
said, though.
That's exactly what he's saying.
I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think, Alex, for where we are right now, it's worthy to take a few more questions since we have people here, but we are wanting to be responsible to those residents that are here. We have a meeting set at 7:30, so the idea is that that's a reasonable thing to do. But for sake of now, I'm on board with saying let's answer a few more questions while we have everybody here. And it sounds like there's some agreement to that, so
All
I would
right,
say,
how about,
let's move forward.
can we live to 7:50? How's that? It gives you 12 minutes to answer, ask additional
Sure.
questions.
All right, I'll do my best to be efficient with the time, in the interest of all those people that live in Webster.
Because the residents, this is a town board workshop, the residents have had, had the community event previously, they can ask questions afterwards. I know they've reached out to us, that we have sent their
All right, so-
concerns that have gone to them, so this is for the town board, unfortunately, it's the system, so. Please, Councilman Wagner.
Next up, so just some clarification. During the planning board's final approval meeting, there was the discussion about adding approximately 1.5 inches of the asphalt cap. And at the time, the response was the engineering team from Montante could look into it, and the response was that wasn't needed. So was the engineering team from Montante redone the engineering with that extra 1.5 inch of cap on there after the planning board approval?
So we discussed it with DEC, and I mean, Janice speaks the language better than I do, but essentially DEC said that the 1.5 spread over the, I think, 2.5 acres was minimal, that they didn't require us to redo the geotech. They weren't concerned about it.
Okay, thank you. You're with me while I look to narrow down my questions in the interest of time. Covered that. Oh, here's a question. I'm trying to understand the risk and how it changes the landscape from what it was before to this. You know, we've got rainwater coming in right now. The cap's designed to flow the rainwater off. The solar arrays obviously form along drip lines. How does that change in the drip lines and the flow of water off the panels impact the cap?
It shouldn't, I mean, I guess I don't fully understand the question. The drainage features will remain.
Yeah, so you're saying that
Yeah.
the solar panels all over this cap are not going to impact the drainage features without it? Zero change? Or
Right.
would it be any change? I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, so based on the valuation that was done, the geotechnical testing, and there were safety factors that were involved, any settlement that was observed was within acceptable tolerances.
Okay. We've talked about the cap. We've talked about the monitoring. Talked about visual impact. Oh, another one. I know this is a big concern among residents is property values. So right now, your stance is, once this goes in, it would not impact property values negatively?
Yeah, there was an article that I think residents were pointing to that had property values across a whole bunch of different situations. And that article actually showed that for brownfields where development happens, property values, nearby property values go up. It's a benefit to the community.
And,
And can I just jump in real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
I think along the lines of property values, I'll just speak to some of the additional analysis that was done, some of it based on public feedback, some of it just as part of the regular application process. But I think we've demonstrated that there won't be aesthetic impacts because of the screening and significant setbacks, same on the noise side of things. So things that you may think of, you know, from a more intensive industrial use that would impact nearby properties, we've demonstrated are not occurring with this project as well.
It would,
Go ahead,
Oh.
sorry.
sorry, I thought you
Okay.
were, am I good?
Yep.
When you come back, it would be helpful when you share all of the areas where there are solar arrays on capped landfills to also provide information about property values or sales around those arrays to show or to demonstrate that there is in fact no impact of property values around those sites.
Of other projects?
Yes.
Yes.
You're referencing?
Of other projects to demonstrate that it does not have a negative impact on property values. Just to have that data point, because if,
And heaven forbid
helpful.
it does change them, is there any mechanism that we, available to the residents to account for that?
Can you say that again? Sorry, I missed
If it does decrease the values of the properties, is there any mechanism to adjust for that with the residents?
So,
You know, if this
our
decreases the
position
property
would be
value.
that it's not causing decreases in property values, and that solar projects generally do not. But again, we've got a situation here where we have a very large parcel, very significant setbacks from the project here. But again, I'll point to a couple things. One, this is an industrial zone site. We're not talking about a large-scale industrial development. But also the host community agreement, and what we talked about in terms of dollars to the town, revenue to the town on a site that is otherwise undevelopable. So that's not, you know, a direct tie to property values, but it is revenue to the town from this project that otherwise wouldn't be coming from this is the nature of this site and everything we're talking about today.
Yeah, with respect to your host agreement, I have yet to see a draft, so I don't know where we are as far as that goes. You are correct. From east to west, there is screening. but it does back up when it hits the point. It's a residential area behind that, so there is some impact. And from a lot of the research that I've done, and not so much this type of a solar project, which is smaller than some of the other larger ones downstate, but they most certainly have seen property values on average decrease by 7% from the information that I've read. So I just find it hard to accept a blanket statement that solar panels don't have impacts on property values, because the information I've read, it does.
We're happy to prepare a response and be prepared to talk about it a little bit more
That's
next
great.
time with more data.
Thank you so much.
And then, as we think about this from the long-term impact for residents, I'll try and understand the flow. DEC sets the rules. Xerox is responsible for monitoring remediation, right? What happens if, unfortunately, Xerox is no longer in the picture or involved? If something happens with Xerox and ownership changes or stuff like that happens, what happens then? Who then goes responsible if it's not Xerox? Who's the next person in line?
As part of their RECRA permit for the facility, they're required to establish it's like a financial reserve mechanism, it's called financial assurance, for 30 years, continued operation if they're no longer
Who Xerox is?
existent.
Yes.
Yep.
Has that been established or no?
Yes.
Oh, that's been established for decades. Yep.
Okay.
And then just going back to the environmental easement that lays out the, obligations for the site for operation, maintenance, monitoring requirements, that runs with the land. So if someone
Yeah.
else were to come in and acquire it, those obligations apply to them.
So can we get a copy of that reserve that's been in place with Xerox to understand?
Yeah, we can provide, we go to the state on an annual basis, DEC reviews it, all our financial documentation, so I can get you a copy of our last submittal.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, Alex, do you have any questions for them?
Yeah, my only
Before we use it
question
all?
is, do you have an agreement with RG&E on hookup time yet?
We do have an interconnection agreement executed with RG&E. We have had our on-site meeting. We won't have a time of when it's going to be interconnected until we give them a start of construction date. So we're going through the approval process now. We're not able to give them one at this time. We do expect, though, the project to be interconnected before October of '27, though.
Okay, just because RG&E
Latest.
takes forever. And then
Yeah.
environmental incidental insurance.
I'm sorry?
Do you have environmental incidental insurance where you basically get a payout if there is a breach? Our building inspector had looked into this, if there is a breach, it's insurance to basically recover any damages that may have occurred to the town.
Let me look into that for you. I just don't know the answer off the top of my head for you right now.
Okay.
That's a great question, by the way, because who would be responsible if there was a breach? Would it be Xerox or would it be Montante?
I think it would depend on like the nature
What
of the
happened?
breach. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why we have that's why there's the environmental insurance, which I wanted to make sure they had.
Thank you so much for your patience this evening. I really appreciate it.
One more quick question, I promise. Going back to the DC letter, it noted there'll be additional submissions and final plans to the agency, and the DC reserves the right to revisit the determination, yada, yada, yada. What additional information still needs to be provided to the DEC before construction can be proceeded if this moves forward?
Sure. So the panels for our project haven't been secured yet because they're millions of dollars, and obviously we're not going to secure them until we have approvals for our project. So we gave them the panels that we think we're going to get, and we have to submit them final snow and wind load calculations. Panel sizes do differentiate a little bit, but not significantly. DEC is comfortable with this. They don't think that any of the differentials are going to have a significance on the geotech report. And then also just like our final drawings, once we get through this approval and make sure there are no changes in anything.
Does anybody know how many times the DEC, a representative of the DEC, actually did a site visit for this project?
They were here last year. We walked them through the site. They came down.
So they've been
at Xerox
here
campus
once,
and we
right?
showed them where the landfill and the solar installation, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then I just want to add one quick point, because I know we're out of time, and I thank you guys for taking all the time with us this evening. But to the extent there are any questions and you want to send them to me via email, what I'll do is compile them all with our responses, and not only file them with you guys, but we can put them on the website too. So if there's any questions, that the public can see our responses to those as well.
Yeah, thank you to all four of you for the time and answering these questions. This is a big decision. We just want to do our best, and we have the residents to understand it. Because it's really, you know, the solar's part of this, but there's so many other parts of the town that don't involve solar. So I really appreciate your time here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will conclude the town board workshop for March 5th, 2026. And it is before the 7:50 deadline, so